So as you folks know, and for those of you that might be new, I see we've got some repeat folks as well as some new folks. Every single month, IncentiFind does what we call our commercial sector demonstration. We feature 2 projects. And those particular projects that we feature usually come as a request from a lot of our affiliates. So I'll show you last month's 2 projects. This month I mentioned we're going to be talking about multi-building ground up development. We had a lot of requests for that saying, you know, I'm a developer, or I work with developers that do multiple asset developments. For example, it could have, you know, a multifamily plus, you know, a Class A office, retail on the bottom, or other types of assets. And so folks really wanted to see what incentives look like for that kind of development. We also had a request regarding solar, specifically in California. So we thought, what a perfect time to talk about our relationship with IV Energy. And I can't wait for you guys to hear all about this fantastic group. So if you want to put a face to a name, that's me, founder of IncentiFind. And I'll talk a little bit more about IncentiFind here in a second. My background is architecture, specifically sustainable architecture. So I've got over 12 years of experience in greening commercial assets in order to increase their value, help them attract and retain tenants better, as well as reduce the operating expenditure for these types of commercial buildings. So I've done everything from hospitals to laboratories, very technical facilities to, you know, your run-of-the-mill double Class A office, LEED certified assets, as well as assets that, you know, use LEED as a benchmark but maybe didn't achieve certification. Today, I'm going to have Logan Carter from IV Energy talk about not only a project that we worked on together, so you guys can see some of the fantastic results for this particular multifamily, but he's going to talk to you about Title 24. I know we get a lot of questions about that at IncentiFind. We do not talk about compliance. That's not something that IncentiFind does. However, we always like to make you guys aware of not only things like Title 24 that do mandate solar, but other things like building energy performance standards that are also sweeping across the United States that require property owners to upgrade their properties to more energy efficient standards. And if you are serving owners in these particular areas, you're going to want to know a little bit more about this. So Logan will talk in a little bit about, like I said, IV Energy, what they do, and the results that it brings to multifamily assets. So I had mentioned that, you know, every single month we, as part of a request from a lot of our affiliates and the, you know, developers and owners we work with, you can see last month we were asked with schools reopening, if we had any great examples of either, you know, K-12 or higher ed examples of what building owners or universities are doing to help anticipate reopening with COVID-19. So you can see we featured a private dormitory. It was an upgrade. It was to bring in more fresh air in order to combat COVID-19, right? So you can see it was in Virginia. Please note, I do always like to mention that we do not answer any specific details on a project. We will keep everything generalized at a high level. And that is to be respectful to a lot of the NDAs or confidentiality agreements we have in place with our owners. So if you have questions about the project, we'll do our best to answer them, but we're also going to make sure that, you know, we are respectful to our owners who are allowing us to feature these projects. So you can see this particular private dormitory owner, this particular private university, ran some upgrades. We gave an example of one dormitory. This was done across several dormitories on this particular campus. They came to IncentiFind. You'll see and hear about our 3-step process here in a bit. And by putting in a 2-minute search, we were able to show them, look, you're in a great, healthy incentive landscape or offering for incentives. Go ahead and purchase one of our Verify reports. We're going to talk about that here in a second. We'll tell you what you're eligible for, give you a game plan on how to strategize and capture those incentives. And then you can see the results of what this particular owner walked away with. Again, this was per dormitory. So 25,000 cash reimbursements for LED lighting upgrade, as well as 15,000 for HVAC controls. We also had a request to see a portfolio review. We get a lot of owners, as well as property management groups that have large portfolios and want to see how they can strategize on capital improvements, and what incentives could look like across that. So you can see we looked at an upgrade of 67 conditioned logistics warehouses in the South Florida area. Same thing, they came to IncentiFind, filled out a 2-minute survey. I'm going to talk about that here in a second. They purchased a Verify report. We showed them that they were eligible for 14 incentives, helped them strategize that really, you know, for what they were doing, they could go after some really low-hanging fruit, which was an LED lighting upgrade. And across those 67 assets, you can see we got them 1.8 million in cash reimbursements, or $26,000 per building. So yeah, can't wait to tell you more about our process, but this is what we featured in July. So let me just give some foundational work. I'm going to tell you about IncentiFind. I'm going to help put IncentiFind together in a case study here in a second. And then I'm going to hand the floor over to Logan, and he's going to tell you about IV Energy. And we're going to bring all of that together in a case study that we did with IV Energy. So who's IncentiFind? Folks, in a nutshell, we are the nation's only database for real estate incentives. We are here to bring cost-saving incentives like you just saw in those July examples, using a 2-minute survey. So I'll dive into those details here in a bit. The thing I want to emphasize right now about IncentiFind is that we do operate virtually. We are headquartered out of Houston, Texas. Even before COVID, we were a virtual operation. So now with COVID, it's really business as usual for IncentiFind and how we serve our owners, or those serving owners like architects, engineers, general contractors, other types of consultants and installers. We always get asked, IncentiFind, you know, where do your incentives come from and how much do they roughly represent? So this particular slide helps you see the 5 levels of government. I'm hovering over them right now. We collect incentives from all 50 states. No, we do not operate or collect incentives in any of the US territories, but in all 50 states we do. So we've got federal incentives, state level incentives, county, city, even utility. That does include gas, electric, and water. Remember, all these levels of government do offer property owners incentives. They can be tax, bill credits, fee waivers. You'll see a little bit more of what's in our database here in a second. The biggest takeaway is that there is about $10 billion represented in our database each and every year that's available to property owners. So I mentioned we use a 2-minute survey to connect properties or projects, right? These can be new construction or existing buildings, to that $10 billion in incentives. So the only thing you, as someone who might be serving owners, or if you're an owner on the line right now, the only thing you're on the hook for is a 2-minute survey about your project. And I'll talk about that here in a second. We do get asked a lot, what is in our database, right? We showed you how much it represents from a dollar value, but here it is on the screen, and we're actually getting ready to do a recount of our incentives. So obviously they're far greater than 12,000, which was our count last year. Notice that our database is bifurcated. So we've got a new construction side of the house, and we've got an existing building. The incentives offered for either one of these types of construction are vastly different. And I've put the key takeaway right there in yellow on the screen. It says above code. One thing we always get asked at IncentiFind is, well, how do I know if my owner, or if I, you know, as the owner, am eligible for any of the incentives in your database? And the simple answer is most projects nowadays, whether new construction or existing building, are going above code without even realizing it, right? Their architects are speccing, you know, pretty, standard materials and equipment or measures, and those happen to already be above code. Anytime you go above code in your equipment, measures, appliances, you name it, you are now considered eligible for any of the incentive categories that you see here. So let me just kind of walk you through them. So we have energy efficiency, right? The biggest differentiator for IncentiFind and what makes us the only database for real estate incentives is that we're going to address how buildings are actually designed and constructed as well as upgraded, which is holistically. So we have our energy efficiency category. No, it is not just a lighting rebate category, right? We have demand response, load management, insulation, roof, building envelope, whole building custom. We have, lighting, HVAC, controls. I could go on, but it's anything that touches that energy system, both indoor and outdoor. We also house renewables. It's mostly going to be solar that we are seeing currently, but we do have, other types of renewable technologies as well. Outside of the energy systems, we also house water conservation. That is indoor and outdoor. We're going to look at a multifamily asset, and you think of every single shower head, faucet, sink, you name it, indoors in a multifamily particular asset. There are some pretty lucrative incentive offerings for that, and they can result in some nice cost savings for developers, owners, and operators. Again, we're going to look at the water conservation both indoor and outdoor. So after we look at a building holistically, then we're going to look at the land that it sits on. So notice the different categories under other, right? These could be economic development type incentives, LEED certification, so on and so forth. So think of our database as looking at the buildings holistically, both indoor, outdoor. Folks, the only way we go horizontal are electric vehicle charge stations. So we mostly are a vertical built environment database. And then at the bottom, you can see the various types of incentives: tax, grants, fee waivers, rebates, and bill credits. For how to engage with IncentiFind, I know it seems, pretty intuitive, and believe it or not, our three-step process is, but I do like to go over this three-step process. The reason being is that being a first mover in the market in these particular products and offerings, right, service offerings, it's nice just to kind of hear me talk through this process, right? So earlier I mentioned, any property or property owner can connect to the incentives in our database using a 2-minute survey. That's this step right here, searching our database, right? We can't know as much as you guys know about a particular property or project, right? So we need either you, the architect, the engineer, the consultant, the general contractor, the facility manager, the property manager, fill out a 2-minute survey. Tell us about the property. That's the only way we're going to be able to go to the next step, which is where we verify what that asset or property is eligible for based on the 2-minute survey, right, and the response here. Owners most certainly can fill out their own surveys. So it's really 6 one, half dozen the other. We see folks that serve owners do it, and we also see them pass on the survey to their owners and have them do it. I think the biggest takeaway right here is that any survey you fill out at IncentiFind.com does not get passed on to third parties. We just don't need to monetize that way, and we're pretty proud of that. So any survey that is filled out will stay between that particular owner and the IncentiFind team only. After you fill out the 2-minute survey, our system can quickly matchmake you to available incentives from all 5 levels of government: federal, state, county, city, and utility level governments. We're going to stack all of those incentives for you, and we're going to also talk you through them on what we call a verify report review call. So you're not just going to get tossed a report and you've got to make heads or tails of it. You're going to be able to talk to our experts and really go incentive by incentive, the good, the bad, the ugly. What should you do? How do we strategize? How much does it represent? What does it take to apply? All that good stuff is included in our verify report. You can see it has a flat fee to it. So anyone who's working with us, east to west coast, north to south, $500 fee for every single building. We do get asked, well, what about multifamily? What if our complex has several buildings? We go ahead and lump it in as all one building. So a multifamily complex with, let's say, 12 buildings would still only have a fee of $500. If you do have campuses, corporate campuses, higher ed, K-12, or portfolios of assets such as hotels, convenience stores, logistics warehouses, you name it, you can also enter in the 2-minute survey. The survey is quite savvy. It'll ask you if you're part of a campus or a portfolio, and the discounts will be applied right then and there on the screen. So you're never going to have a surprise about what the fee is associated with that. After you put in the 2-minute survey, we tell you what you're eligible for. The next most logical step is, of course, well, how do I apply? And IncentiFind, can you do it for me? The answer is absolutely. We help about 85% of our owners or those serving them with their rebate incentives. These are usually offered at the utility level, so gas, electric, and water. We do all of that in-house. We have an application fulfillment team that helps us do this, and we take what's called a contingency fee. So whatever incentives we capture, and I'll show you some examples here in a bit so you don't have to imagine that. Once we're successful at capturing that particular rebate, we take 25%, send that owner, or if, perhaps it needs to go to the architect, engineer, contractor, or consultant, we send the 75% off to whoever the beneficiary is. Please note, we do not do any tax-related incentives in-house. However, we are teamed with several tax firms around the country, so we can white glove service this for your owners if they get really excited about an opportunity zone tax credit, new market tax credit, maybe a tax abatement program. We certainly can give them that feel of white glove service. Question we always get asked, when do I start planning for my incentives? What's my ideal window to connect to incentives? Here I've got a construction project lifecycle up on the screen. So you can see some pretty basic phases, right? You've got design phase. Tender would just be putting out an RFP or putting it out to bid, right? And then the construction begins, and obviously the building is then handed over to the owner or developer, right? For existing buildings, there is a bad or wrong time to start looking or planning for incentives. If you are 60 days before installing that new equipment, demoing or gutting that particular space out, you're getting really close to the bottom of the ninth. We have never seen an existing building incentive be retroactively applied. So you need to get it, if you have an existing building asset, the sooner the better, honestly, to allow us enough time to get your application submitted, get your pre-approval, earmark those funds for you, and tell you when you can anticipate receiving those particular rebate checks, right? For new construction, you've got a wide window. So you can come to us early. We usually have a lot of developers that will come to IncentiFind when they're trying to decide between 2 land parcels. They've got land parcel A and B, and they say, you know what, IncentiFind, we're having a hard time deciding between the 2. Can you run a verify report on land parcel A? We send those incentives off to them. Sometimes it helps them make that decision to go with land parcel A. Sometimes the deal still isn't going to pencil, so they're going to go with land parcel B. So your ideal window for new construction can be as early as deciding between land parcels all the way until you see right here your cutoff point, typically and on average for what we see with utility companies, no more than 12 months past certificate of occupancy. Last question we get at IncentiFind is, so you're going to tell me how much every incentive's worth, right? And what will you use to determine that? So yes, we will give you an estimate based on where you are in the construction project life cycle. So notice, there's those ideal windows for existing buildings and new construction. We'll give you a soft estimate if you do not have finalized specifications, quantities, you know, for your equipment that you might be replacing, or anything that you might be speccing for procurement, right? And a soft estimate means we're going to use historic data based on your survey response and say, you know what, for an asset type like yours in this particular location with that scope of work, we've seen this dollar amount typically go back to the owner or other type of beneficiary. So that's what a soft estimate is, historical data. If you do have your finalized specifications, quantities, equipment plans, you name it, hand them over to our application fulfillment team. They will run a hard calculation using the utility software or spreadsheet and provide you with that hard estimate, as well as when you can expect to receive those particular checks. So that is something we can definitely do for you guys. So let me put together IncentiFind and then hand the floor over to Logan, okay? So I always like to use project examples. Incredibly visual person. I had mentioned that we got a huge request for, you know, IncentiFind. We haven't seen you guys do a ground up multi-building development. So could you feature one of those? Sure thing. We grabbed one out of Texas. We're going to keep this one anonymized. It's a large development, right? So this particular owner came to IncentiFind, right? You now know the 3-step process. So they filled out that 2-minute survey. After that, we showed them, look, you're in a great and healthy incentive landscape, even though you're just outside a major metro area. They went ahead, purchased our Verify report. It wasn't just $500. Remember, for multiple buildings, we do have a $500 fee assessed per building. So this one had multiple buildings. I can't remember how many off the top of my head, but I think it was about 6. So once they purchased the Verify report for each of the different asset types, we showed them everything they were eligible for and put together a game plan for how to capture all of these incentives. Okay, so let's talk about that game plan we put together and how we're doing or have completed all the application fulfillment services for them. So you can see right here, look at the bold description. There are owner incentives, and then notice there's tenant incentives. So let me talk about what we did for this particular developer here, okay? So we looked at all of their basic non-multifamily commercial assets, right? Their offices, their retail spaces, things of that nature. We looked at everything energy efficiency related, put a strategy together for their lighting, HVAC, other MEP systems, load management programs that we recommended, generators, I mean, you name it, it was all there. So we put together that particular strategy for them, showed them that $375,000 in cash reimbursements would be available to them for those particular commercial assets, right? Then we looked at their multifamily that they had. Typically, multifamily programs are separate than commercial, your commercial office or commercial retail type incentive programs. So we looked at their multifamily, again, focused on low-hanging fruit, energy efficient measures that they were going to be tackling as part of their design standards, right? And saw that there was about $200,000 in cash reimbursements that they could get as soon as they finished the installing of these energy efficient equipment. We also grabbed generators, as I'd mentioned that. Remember, we do house tax incentives. We do not do them in-house, but we certainly can white glove service by sending you over to one of our subject matter experts who certainly can help you with that. So you can see they took advantage of the 45L, 179D, some other sales tax incentives that are specific to the state of Texas, as well as a tax abatement program for water conservation efforts they were doing on site. We can only tell you as of now, based on negotiations, it is over $1 million. We will not get anything definitive for, I'd say, about another 6, maybe 9 months, just depending on how those negotiations go. And then, of course, we were able to show the owner they were in a PACE eligible area, and we're able to connect them to a particular PACE lender. And that's just another, it's a financing mechanism. I believe in the month of October, we will have our PACE subject matter expert on who will talk about PACE, because we do get a lot of questions about that. After we showed the owner everything that was available to them, we then, the owner asked us, said, look, there are some core and shell spaces that I'm building out to try and attract some anchor tenants. Do you have any incentives that could help me attract those tenants? We said, absolutely. So we ran a separate report for this, for their tenants' spaces. This was mostly in their retail area. And put together some pretty lucrative, cash reimbursements that tenants could look forward to as they had to, retrofit their particular spaces. So that's something we do a lot for our developers, especially in new construction. So the overall takeaway is that you can see we average, while we always promise a 10x ROI in the form of incentives on your $500 fee, we actually end up averaging well over 100x in ROI in the form of incentives. So this time, I'd really like to hand the floor over to Logan. He's gonna tell you about himself, tell you about IV Energy, their solution. He's gonna tell you states and cities where this is, Title 24 is mandated. And then we're gonna bring the conversation together on a project we worked on and show you some of the savings there. So Logan, floor is yours.
Yes, Natalie, thank you for the introduction. So my name is Logan Carter. I'm the VP of Operations here at IV Energy. I've been with IV for about 2.5 years now. We actually initially started this company prior to the new Title 24 mandates that were released. And so it was kind of a blessing at the same time, but really it went right in line. So I was going to dive into that here today. Before I do that, my background personally is I am a professional engineer here in the state of California. I also have my own real estate development projects as well. I've spent the last 7 years focusing on renewable energy design and finance consulting. So all of that together really has brought kind of a back history into IV Energy and the market that we're going after. So relaying the new, say, issue, a problem that's on the table with the new Title 24 mandates that were released here in January 2020. Want to give a little bit of a back history here. So in particular, today we're going to talk about California. California is somewhat setting the trend, and a few other states are following along, but in particular, California is definitely in the forefront. So back in 2018, California committed to an aggressive goal of running 100% off renewable energy by 2045. There's actually a few different cities that are even quicker than that are trying to hit to 2030 or 2035 to be 100% renewable energy. So you'll see initiatives all through the state of California. The new mandates, the new California Title 24 2019 mandates went into effect January 1, 2020. With these new mandates, they affect in particularly residential new developments. In 3 stories and under, this requires roughly 50 to 65% of their site consumption offset to be offset by solar. Now, there's a few different exemptions. There's about 7 different ways to get exemptions on that, but in particular, when it is a 3 stories and under, you're not able to utilize a lot of those exemptions. Most particular is shade constraints or lack of rooftop, and therefore 3 stories and under, you typically will have enough rooftop. For the 4 stories to 10 stories, they realize that when it gets to a taller building, there may not be as much rooftop, which will create not as feasible for solar. So you're able to create quite a bit of an exemptions on that front, but what they've actually done is they've reduced the mandate to now more of a designated solar zone on your rooftop. So the buildings that are hit, I'd say the hardest by Title 24 are going to be those 3 stories and under. In particular, where we're focused on is going to be a garden style, multi-unit, multifamily developments. That's in the residential division. When it comes to non-residential, so AKA commercial, they have similar, but they're not as strict. They do now have 3 stories and under designated solar zone requirements. So similar to the lighter constraints on on, or lighter restrictions on the 4 to 10 stories for residential, you'll have a designated zone on your rooftop now designated for solar required. When we talk about adoption here, as this state of California is pushing for 100% renewable energy offset, we're seeing not only solar, we're seeing EV chargers, we're seeing a big push towards on-site renewable energy. So the additional states that we're seeing adapt this definitely is going to be up in the Northeast. So we've seen it in Massachusetts and New York, a few different territories up in the Northeast. Illinois is a big one. And then Hawaii has always been a pretty big incentive, mainly because utility is very high there. In Colorado, we're also seeing that. And then a few other states kind of peppered through the United States are slowly adopting as well. But we do foresee this trend just rising.
Oops, sorry about that,
Next
Logan.
slide. No, you're fine.
Yeah, there we go.
So what this new mandate has really generated is for Ivy Energy to excel in this opportunity. And prior to this mandate, there's really been no incentive for multi-unit building owners to adopt on-site renewable energy, as there's been no efficient or fair way to monetize their investment. So what Ivy's platform does is it creates this win-win-win environment throughout the property. And that is going to be a win to the asset manager, the win to the property manager, the win to the tenants, and then ultimately the state wins as well. So what this platform and this environment does and how it affects, let me go into it here. So how it goes into effect towards asset owners is the ability to monitor cost and the asset owners with Ivy's platform, the monitoring and cost calculation engine within our platform, it removes liability on the billing and the overall discounting to your tenants. So to describe that a little bit further is it allows you to invest in an on-site renewable energy asset, and that investment now produces energy on-site. And in the solar world, you're able to levelize your cost to produce energy over the warranted life of the system. And the beautiful thing about solar is typically all modules, as long as they're tier 1, are warranted for 25 years. And in what we're seeing in an asset management world, a lot of times you want to hold your property for a lengthy period of time. Your goal is to hold that asset. So if you're able to invest in on-site renewable energy, you're able to levelize that cost to generate on-site energy, we're seeing that cost be around 3 to 5 cents. So that's 3 to 5 cents per kilowatt hour. And the way to think about that is almost like you're pumping gas into your vehicle and a cost per gallon. Well, this is a cost per turning a light bulb on. So if you're able to levelize your investment at 3 to 5 cents, but with our platform, you're able to bill for market rate. So you're able to bill, and right now market rate for residential tenants is, in the state of California, is about 23 cents. So say you generate energy at 5 cents, you're able to bill for 23 cents, you have a margin of opportunity there, and an operating income that you did not have on site prior to this. So what this really does on our back end of our virtual grid intelligence is that we're able to monetize and able to directly tap into every single individual unit consumption. So your entire site's consumption, your EV consumption, your common area consumption, and each individual tenant consumption. And then we're able to allocate the solar generation to offset all of these units on the back end. What we create on the forefront is we create an automated billing structure that is able to structure the bill directly to a tenant for their exact profile of what they consumed and exactly what they would have been billed from the utility directly. And the independent power provider code allows building asset owners to be able to invest in on-site renewable energy and able to pass it along to their tenants. They just cannot bill for 1 cent more than what they would have paid. And that is exactly what our platform does. Our platform recreates the bill, and then on the back end, we provide the owner or asset manager the ability to transparently see the margin that they've created. And then on top of that, we're able to create a potential for that asset manager to pass along savings to the tenants. And what we do is we create an environment that is ideally you're only passing along a portion of your solar margin. So it really protects the asset manager's investment. It creates a financeable asset because you're able to always protect your hard cost to utility and your hard cost to your investment, and then only share the margin with your tenants. And it creates a very win-win environment. So to go to a tenant-facing environment with Ivy Solution, you have the ability as a tenant to opt in or opt out into the program. A lot of times that's very structured dependent on the utilities. The big three in California are very, very friendly to this with a platform called virtual net metering or NEM aggregation. So on top of that, you're able to gain access to renewable energy that you did not have before. So you're able to, utilize on-site renewable energy. And what another point is, if you look to our bill here on the right side, you're able to see that we produce a bill structured particular to your unit. So you're able to see exactly your unit consumption profiles relative to your solar profile that's on site. And you're able to provide a load shift. And as long as the asset manager is passing along a discount to the tenants, if you're able to load shift usage when you have on-site renewable energy, you're able to actually save money on the bottom line. So, and that's a little bit of a complexity that we can describe further into on another time. But the environment here is to be able to make this environment very a win-win friendliness to both parties, and be able to create a very friendly billing environment where tenants are happy to pay for this and happy to create this and happy to understand their usage profiles and how they could shift this. The state of California is currently funding us with grant funds to be able to put this into motion. They really want tenants to be aware of their consumption profile and especially aware of it relative to on-site renewable energy. So we don't have to send our solar offsite, utilize the grid as a bank, and then come back and use it later. So we have the ability to be as transparent with that as possible. The third win here is going to be for property management. The integration with property management right now, we're seeing is one of the biggest triggers, and one of the biggest triggers for our platform to be integrated smoothly into this entire system. So for us, we indemnify our data gathering, we indemnify our monitoring and our bill generation. We create a third-party back data segmented and optimized for accounting integrations, as well as a direct integration into your current platform that you have in place. And so we try to say, to add it, forget it, to be able to not have to add this as another constraint. We're directly integrated into your rent ledger and able to integrate into the exact same platform that the tenants are currently being billed from. So on top of that, how we've seen in the market today is we've seen end of the month summarizing of total solar, total consumption, and then total bill discounting versus the true solar savings discounting, which is what our software does. So this really protects you from over discounting or discounting any of your hard costs. That's one of the biggest factors that we've seen here. So on top of this direct win-win-win environment, what we do here is we'll actually integrate with a developer throughout the process. So just as Natalie showed on the previous slides here, about 2 slides ago, she showed integration throughout the design process. And just as IncentiFind is integrated throughout the process through different stages, so is Ivy. Ivy can be integrated for a retrofit, so after the fact, existing buildings. When it's most ideal, exactly what Natalie said is, earlier than 60 days. We ask for at least 60-day integration, but prior to that, we want to go through entire platform integration, property management integration to be able to create this very user-friendly environment. Because once you go solar, you don't want to be generating or offsetting a bill without this platform in place. When it comes to new construction, we'll actually have contracts throughout the whole process. And even to go back further than what Natalie showed was even on an acquisition. So there's real estate developers that are out there looking for new projects. And I think this is something that Natalie can show as well. But even for a few different developers, they've been able to sign on consulting contract with us early on when they're even looking at a property, looking at what they may need to put into a property, and then be able to project your operating income coming out of it. And with our platform, we're able to go in there and actually help project an increased NOI per unit. And what that does is that increases your NOI. No increase in rent, simply a change in billing platform, and potentially even savings to your tenant with added marketing abilities to market for clean renewable energy on site. We create we unlock a hidden operating income generator. What that does is it skyrockets your market valuation. So we're able to come in very early on, or we're able to come in during the design development phase, or during, right when permits are pulled. The thing with solar is it can be a deferred submittal. So it can be throughout construction. Technically, it can be still implemented there. But there is that sticky point of onboarding tenants. You probably want to do this, activate or engage with us prior to 60 to 90 days prior to any kind of tenant onboarding, or you want to wait until it's a retrofit afterward, because the biggest alteration or change with Ivy is going to be in that billing platform and that rent ledger integration. So Natalie, would you like to talk about our projects that we're working on, or did you want me to describe anything of that sort?
Yeah, I was going to say, and I think we're going to have time too for Q&A, because I have been getting some direct messages. But yeah, I think it'd be great for the group to at least see all of us come together on, a real project example. And for the individual that direct messaged me, this is going to answer your question you asked. So does someone engage with Ivy first, or should they start with IncentiFind? It doesn't matter. Through our particular relationship with Ivy, you can definitely start with these guys, and they're going to rope in IncentiFind to couple additional incentives that might be of interest to you, right? And that's what this particular case study that's right here did. Or you can start with IncentiFind, and we already have our database mapped to where we know where Title 24 has been enacted. And if you happen to be one of these asset types that's ideal for the Ivy Energy software, we're going to go ahead and make you aware of that. You'll get it right there in your verify report. You can click a link that says connect me, to Logan and his team, and it's going to send that email over. these guys are going to get engaged with you, and they're going to, you know, streamline their process that Logan just ran through. So there's no wrong way. You don't have to start with, you know, IncentiFind or Ivy. You can pick either one. You're going to end up at each other's doorsteps regardless, right? So this particular multifamily, let me just kind of set the stage here. So this is we do need to keep it high level and anonymized, right? So we can only tell you it is in the California area. It is 50,000 square feet. It is a ground up development, right? So around 50 units that you see there. It did have a few individual buildings. It did have the affordable housing component. Right away, the developer knew they needed to meet the requirements of Title 24 for the new housing, right? So in this particular case, they came to Ivy first. Ivy said, look, if you're going to be looking at solar, you should also be made aware of additional incentives that are available for your new development, right? So this owner came over to IncentiFind. Remember, they're on the hook for a 2-minute survey. The owner filled it out himself. Of course, they were in a pretty healthy incentive landscape. We showed them there's, you know, you're eligible definitely for 22 incentives, but we always want to give you a realistic strategy or game plan on what incentives you should really be looking to capture, right? So we showed this owner, look for 2 incentives that were already a part of your design standards. We can definitely capture right here. I put in bold: energy efficiency rebates. That was HVAC, LED, thermostats, envelope related incentives, as well as appliance. And then for water conservation, we looked at irrigation, sprinkler controls, plumbing fixtures, and aerators, right? So quick cash reimbursements. And if you want to do some scaling in your head real quick, on average, most multifamilies and IncentiFind sees come through our database, national average, are about 150 units, right? So if 90K comes out of a 50 unit complex, right, you can kind of just scale it up there, right? There's additional savings out there. But for Ivy, and I'll hand it over to Logan, maybe you can talk about the process here. You can see the owner's also going to walk away using that win-win strategy in the form of a bill credit, as I understood it. So Logan, some of the things that I got another direct message on, and I think you could hit upon it here with this particular developer, is, you know, do I need to have a solar installer, or do you guys help streamline that process? In other words, how do they, what's the process when that owner or developer lands at your doorstep, and how do you guys kind of walk them through the Title 24 compliance and all that good stuff?
Yes, that's a great question. So the answer really is structured in multiple ways. If we are early on and we're actually just packaging a funding package for them going into the development, no, we're agnostic to an EPC contractor. We can help size and lay out the solar system to be relative to your site. However, what we're seeing the trend is getting solar contractors, solar EPCs, getting their design team on board, maybe in a 2-part contract, and a design contract, and then later an RFP, actual construction contract later on. It depends. As I mentioned before, solar can be a deferred submittal. However, you want to have your dry utility and your gear sized early on during the design. So I would highly suggest getting a solar designer on board. So as of right now, Ivy Energy does not offer that because there's so many other opportunities that do. We can absolutely help guide you in that direction and help guide through that process. We have preferred partners that provide this as well, left and right, all throughout, actually throughout the nation. So definitely we can help guide that process.
Excellent. So for this particular case study, and I'll tee this next question up for you, that was also in my direct message, is so, you know, for your particular software, these are savings that in this case, right, it's a developer we're talking about, right? And they will go on to operate this particular multifamily. So the savings that were shown or realized on the previous screen, this is something that an owner can anticipate monthly in perpetuity. How does that work?
Yeah, so for this particular site, it was 50 units, and what it's showing here in Ivy software eligibility, what this has done here is it created a yearly net operating income from the solar and the billing platform being integrated. And what this is this developer was required to go solar anyway. However, there was no way to monetize that investment. So simply an increase to your construction budget. But this solar is offsetting these tenants' bills. And you're not required to pass along these savings to your tenants. But with Ivy's platform, you're able to put in a platform, build them for exactly what they would have been billed for utility rates at market rate, and capture the margin for you. You as a developer invested in the solar asset, so you should gain the benefits of it, not only to pay back your investment, but actually to actually capture additional operating income. And for this particular site, rather than taking a solar investment that is just a additional bottom line to your construction costs, it's turning that hard cost, a sunk cost, into a revenue generator. So what our platform creates is a pure rev gen without increasing any rents or any expenses to your tenants.
Nice. And then this is I'm doing a time check. Yeah, we've got time for one last, this is the last question I got. And I think it's a great question. It says, I know I'm on the hook for a 2-minute survey for IncentiFind, then what? And what's the duration for Ivy? So I'll answer the IncentiFind part and let Logan talk to you a little bit more about what to anticipate, and manage your expectations for the time it takes to kind of run through their process. So you're right, you are on the hook, whether you're an owner or serving a property owner, right, for a 2-minute survey. After that, it takes about 10 business days on average for the IncentiFind team to get you your verify report. Remember, we're going to offer you a 1-hour call to book with our experts. You can ask them anything you want. So it's really 2-minute survey, allow 10 business days. Then you're going to want that 1-hour call, right? And then if you choose our application fulfillment services, our team's going to grab all of those finalized specifications and quantities. They're going to do all the applications, and all you do is check your apply dashboard and see how the applications are going through the process, right? And we're going to always manage your expectations there and tell you, you're waiting for a post-install inspection, and then it's 4 to 6 weeks, and then the check will hit for the, I don't know, LED lighting or whatever it is. So that's kind of the duration for IncentiFind, right? 2 minutes, 10 business days, you get your report. Then the applications do need to coincide with your construction process, right? You're not going to get the rebate in advance of installing the eligible equipment. You do need to install that, then you get the check. Logan, can you talk to us a little bit about, what's the time estimate for engaging with Ivy?
So Ivy Energy is a software service. And so ultimately we are a service contract that once your product is up and live, we are booked and contracted for a service period, whether that's 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. I think our longest contract is 12 years. And that is to be in place to completely turnkey operate and manage your billing platform. So your monitoring and billing platform for your solar regeneration and your tenant environment there. As far as our engagement, it really depends how early on we are engaged, but you could think of us as adding on top of, or in addition to your development team. And what we bring to your development team is we bring the ability to really be your renewable energy finance consultant, is how we say it, as well as a monitoring and bill generation software platform. So ultimately we are on for the long run. And that's one thing that I think is to our advantage is that we're not in and out. So we are here and we're part of the company, part of the development for the long run. So we are really, really about that win-win environment, because that environment is going to come back to our day-to-day integration and our day-to-day, I'd say, like I mentioned, integration with your company, with the property management group, with the tenants, and with the owners.
Absolutely. So I know that one last question snuck in, but folks, I want to make sure we're respectful of everybody's time. Here's what I can say. if you've got questions about incentives, definitely head to IncentiFind.com. Again, that 2-minute survey will be there. If you are in that area where Title 24 is a mandate, don't worry, we're going to put you right in front of our partners here at Ivy Energy. For the individual that had the question about if Ivy finances, I want to go ahead and just tell you, they head to their website. Remember, you're going to get a copy of this recording in your email. You can find Logan's contact information there. He can talk to you about, how they look at financing and other things. Sorry, I'm seeing other questions streamline in. But Ivy Energy will be happy to answer all of your questions. For next month, we will have our demonstration. Feel free to send an email if there's a particular asset type or part of the country that you want to see IncentiFind demonstrate some incentives that were captured. We always like to get your feedback, make sure you're engaged. Thank you so much, Logan and Ivy team, for joining us, and I will send you guys the remaining questions because folks seem to really be interested in the offering that you guys are providing. So appreciate it, and we will see you guys next month. Thanks so much.